Hello everyone and welcome back to Greenstack Hydrogen webinar series. I'm your host Prasadini Wickramasinghe. I am an energy analyst and I coordinate our activities at Greenstack Hydrogen in Sri Lanka. It's wonderful to see many of you joining us today from the different part of the world. Thank you for taking time to be here with us. Today's webinar is titled Just Energy Transition, How to Realize a Globally Inclusive Decarbonization Beneficial for All. In this session, we will take a deep dive into how gender-sensitive policy approaches can support a just and inclusive global energy transition. Now it's my pleasure to warmly welcome our guest speaker, Paulina Brunn. Thank you, Paulina, for accepting our invitation. We are truly happy to have you with us today. Paulina is joining us from the H2 Diplo team, and she will be presenting insights from their recent study titled Challenging Entrenched Power Structures in the Energy Sector, Feminist Foreign Policy as a Key to the Just Transition. Paulina is an advisor on energy transition diplomacy with H2 Diplo, a project by GIS and commissioned by the German Federal Foreign Office. She is based in Berlin and plays a key role in bringing people together from around the world to support energy transition efforts. Her work also extends through another global GIS project, Public Diplomacy on Energy Transition, which supports international communication on behalf of German Foreign Ministry. Paulina has a strong background in political science, diplomacy, and energy policy. She brings a truthful and inclusive perspective to one of the most important topics of our time, making sure the shift to clean energy is not only sustainable but also fair and just for all. She is also a strong advocate for feminist foreign policy in the energy sector with focus on equality and inclusiveness in climate action. Yes. Before her current role, Paulina worked in policy monitoring in energy, transport, and climate sectors, and also gained experience at German Federal Foreign Ministry. Before we begin, allow me to quickly introduce who we are. Greenstack Hydrogen is a consulting company focused on advancing renewable energy, especially green hydrogen. Our Center of Excellence for Hydrogen, based here in Sri Lanka, supports knowledge sharing, capacity building, and global collaboration. We work closely with universities and international experts to support hydrogen safety, technology, policy, and the full hydrogen value chain. Please follow us on LinkedIn for the latest updates on projects, webinars, and partnerships. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch our recording of past webinars. Visit our website to learn more about Greenstack Hydrogen. Before we dive in, just a few housekeeping rules. Please keep your microphones muted during the presentation. If you do like to, you are welcome to turn on your videos. And feel free to submit your questions at any time using the Q&A box. The questions will be answered in the end. Towards the end, we will have a guided discussion session with the questions prepared by the speaker. So we hope to hear your thoughts and insights from different countries and backgrounds. We'll also take a group photo at the end, so please stay with us till the end. And finally, the recording of this webinar will be shared with all the registered participants in the coming weeks. Without further ado, let's dive into today's session. Paulina, the stage is yours. And I will share your presentation.
Thank you, Prasadini. I'm excited to be with you all here today.
I hope you
All
can
right.
see the presentation.
Yes,
Okay.
we see the presentation. So as Prasadina already announced, today's topic will be the just energy transition and how to facilitate that. So I have a short agenda brought for you today. We will start with a brief introduction of H2Deep and of the topic that I'm presenting on today. We will then go into the analytical framework and methodology of the study that Prasadini already announced, and go then over to the key findings and some academic concepts that are needed to understand the study, and then we will finish with some policy approaches for change. And then lastly, I hope to engage all of you in a nice little discussion and to exchange our views on the topic. All right, next slide, please. So I'm here today as a representative for the H2Deep decarbonization diplomacy project. The project is commissioned by the German Federal Foreign Office under the International Climate Initiative and is implemented by GIZ, which is the German Development Cooperation Company. So on this slide, you can see our project goals, which is that H2Deep supports the global energy transition by facilitating international collaboration. And the three cornerstones of our project goals are to promote hydrogen, to decarbonize industries and achieving the net zero targets, to foster sustainable economic development, and to encourage partnerships. Next slide, please. So here you can see our project instruments that we use to accompany to realize those project goals, which are focused on dialogue and networking to engage with partner countries, technical consulting, internal exchange, and the support of the Foreign Office and the German embassies around the globe. We are active in the partner countries that you can see here today, which are marked as the H2Deep offices on the map on the left, and we also facilitate individual activities around the globe, which is in countries where the number is always growing. So we're always looking to further our cooperation activities. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so let's start with some well-known information. I assume that you all are aware with that. But why is the energy sector so central to climate action? As we all know, CO2 is the most commonly emitted greenhouse gas, and roughly 70% of the global CO2 emissions stem from the use of fossil resources in the energy sector, which means that there cannot be meaningful climate action without transforming the energy sector. And to do that, we do need a just transition, which will ensure the lasting support of the transformation. So only if we leave no one behind while doing so, we can realize that the transformation is meaningful. Globally, there are currently existing inequalities in energy systems, which is especially within the global south due to colonial continuities. Therefore, there's a special role of countries in the global north to realize the just transition. That is due to historical emissions, but also related to the economic capacities and the international cooperation around renewable energy imports holds the potential to shape the transition. Shifting away from fossil fuels, besides the fact that it will help us realize the net zero goals, allow us to build a more just energy system with all the corresponding benefits such as economic growth, energy security, and the overall SDG realization. The need for just transition is already recognized in the 2015 Paris Agreement, which is, of course, the underlying agreement for all climate action. So now the implementation of that is key. For the energy transition to be just and inclusive and not just a technological issue, new holistic approaches are needed, which is basically what we are here to talk about today. Next slide, please. All right, so I will present our recent study to how feminist policy approaches can allow us to realize that just transition. The study objectives are twofold. So it's first how entrenched power structures and inequality in the energy sector can be overcome for just transition to be possible. And the second part is to analyze the key role feminist foreign policies can and should play in facilitating. So feminist foreign policies initiatives are generally centered around human rights and the inclusion of marginalized groups, as well as gender equality, which is something I will dive more into later. With regard to the power imbalances that I already mentioned of the global energy system, it's also something I will get more into later. It can be a well-suited approach to overcome those inequalities and therefore making the transformation more just. The key question here is what policy initiatives are needed to overcome existing inequalities. As of now, feminist foreign policies have mostly treated energy concerning energy poverty and women's economic participation. Our studies try to enlarge that perspective and to make it more inclusive, to try to find solutions for the problems that we have in realizing a just transition. To do that, we applied a feminist analytical lens. The study was facilitated in cooperation with ZISPONS. So they researched the interconnection of feminist policy approaches and decarbonization. Next slide, please. Feminist analytical lens means the inclusion of 3 Rs, which is a common concept derived from the original Swedish feminist foreign policy. And we enlarged that by a feminist climate justice lens that is based on the UN Women Framework and includes redistribution, reparation, recognition, and representation to recognize the historic inequalities and the intersecting forms of discrimination which can be visible in the energy field. To do that, a mixed method approach has been applied, so it entailed expert interviews and a literature review. All right, so let's see what did we find. Next slide, please. Okay, so an overview about our key findings is that energy systems are marked by entrenched power structures and inequalities. It is not something that is original to energy systems or unique, but it can also be found in energy systems. And all of the inequalities that we found disproportionately impact girls, women, and marginalized communities who are also affected in multiple ways many times. So intersectional factors such as race, class, age, and disability are always something that I mean when I say marginalized groups or girls or women over the course of this presentation. The 3 Rs, resources, rights, and representation, as I already mentioned, are key concepts of feminist policy approaches. Resources entails the equal access to resources such as education, finances, and technology. And within the energy sector, natural resources, electricity, employment, which all profoundly shape the ability to actively participate in the energy sector. Rights refers to the protection of rights of all people and violations which in the energy sector disproportionately affect those marginalized communities I already mentioned, e.g. because energy projects take place on their land. So many times in like rural areas where indigenous people live, kind of like. And representation, lastly, refers to the active inclusion in negotiation processes and decision-making of all kinds, where in the energy sector, women and marginalized groups are underrepresented. And although the renewable sector is doing a little bit better in that regard, the fossil fuel sector and renewables alike, like gender equitable leadership. So in leadership roles, women continue to be underrepresented. I will get to each of those in more detail now. So next slide, please. We'll start with a more thorough definition of resources as we understood it in the study. So the unequal access to energy system leads to ecological impact, social inequalities, and justice challenges. Those are due to ecological impacts. So, for example, fossil fuel extraction drives deforestation, biodiversity loss, pollution, and renewable energies can also harm ecosystem if there's no justice-oriented planning. Then unequal access is another driver for those ecological impacts. So marginalized groups face barriers to reliable, affordable energy. So and then consequently, energy poverty limits healthcare, education, economic participation, and increases the unpaid labor of especially women. Ownership inequality is also a factor that plays a role. So the resources we need for energy are largely controlled by big corporations and wealthy investors, which naturally excludes local and indigenous communities, thereby reinforcing historical injustices and limiting economic benefits for marginalized groups. And lastly, community solutions and barriers. While community-driven renewable energy models of employment and empowerment, but oftentimes they face structural barriers like limited financing or competition with large private actors, as well as a lack of supportive policies. Next slide, please. So what are the implications for the energy sector of those inequalities in the realm of resources that we did find? So there's environmental harm in planning, construction, and operation of energy infrastructure, which leads to environmental degradation, resource depletion, and environmental destruction. Renewable energy projects also can cause ecological and social disruptions if implemented without consideration for local contexts. But that is something that is predominantly visible in the fossil fuel sector, since it is very harmful to the environment. Then we also found that energy poverty limits access to healthcare, education, and economic participation. So marginalized groups such as women, low-income households, and indigenous communities face barriers to reliable, affordable energy, leading to energy poverty. And the resulting energy access gap is rooted in systemic infrastructure neglect and structural inequalities, which leave rural and marginalized communities underserved. And lastly, energy ownership and unequal distribution of benefits, meaning who controls the energy resources, often exclude marginalized communities from the benefits of the clean energy transition, thereby reinforcing historical injustices and limiting economic benefits for marginalized groups. All right, next slide, please. So we turn to the second R now, which is rights. So first starting to with a definition for that and how it was understood and what we did find in the study. So rights violation oftentimes are due to weak regulatory frameworks, meaning that many countries lack robust legal frameworks, accountability, and effective enforcement mechanisms, which enables ecological harm and labor exploitation. also existing power asymmetries. For example, that large corporations leverage their influence over policies, marginalizes local communities, and prioritizes corporate interests, leading to limited political will that will further weaken accountability and enforcement. Then the limited access to justice, as the word already says, rights, it mainly refers to holding up the rights of all people, where two marginalized communities oftentimes face barriers like financial, geographic, or informational to claiming their rights or seeking redress, and narrow legal interpretations restrict effective legal action in those cases. Rights violations are something that is very widespread. Examples include land dispossession, displacement, gender-based violence, and cultural marginalization, which can all occur due to energy projects. And lastly, labor exploitation is also something which we understood under the rights wording. So persistent inequalities which affect women, migrants, informal workers, groups which are characterized by low wages, hazardous conditions, and gender discrimination, and facing gender discrimination. And in many cases, the renewable sector also has precarious employment and exploitative supply chains. Next slide, please. So those rights violations lead to land dispossession, forced displacement, exploitative labor conditions, which are also connected to weak regulatory frameworks and accountability mechanisms, as well as a lack of transparency. So the study found that rights violations are widespread in energy sector, energy project planning. Energy projects often bypass free, prior, and informed consent, ignoring, for example, the rights of indigenous people and thereby perpetuating historical injustices despite international frameworks protecting them. Exploitative working conditions in the energy sector persist due to weak regulation affecting women, migrants, informal workers, and the power asymmetries that I already mentioned before. That is something that also is persistent within renewable energy projects. So transition to renewable energy may replicate existing injustices, especially if, for example, weak regulatory frameworks which hinder accountability include weak enforcement mechanisms, for example, undermining legal frameworks in the energy sector. And the limited access to justice in combination with the transparency deficits, which are caused by the power imbalances that I already mentioned before. And those weak regulatory frameworks oftentimes also affect renewable energy projects with a risk of ecological harm, labor exploitation, and the supply chain complexities of renewable energy projects, which make enforcement even more challenging. All right, slide, please. The third R that I mentioned before is representation. So representation and participation within energy systems. And there are so economic and political underrepresentation is one of the key factors for a lack of representation and participation in the energy sector for example, women and marginalized groups who are significantly underrepresented in energy workforce and especially in leadership roles. They are also they also have a limited participation in energy policy making, meaning that their perspective and traditional knowledge are often ignored, which hinders inclusive and effective energy solutions. That reinforces systemic barriers, and those include, for example, discriminatory hiring practices, a lack of gender equity policies, patriarchal norms which persist, limited mentorship opportunities, for example, for women and marginalized group, and inadequate family-friendly workplace policies, which all perpetuate inequalities. Another concept that we used in the study is the narratives of nature and labor. So dominant economic frameworks treat nature and labor as expendable resources, and gendered stereotypes in that context, such as patriarchomasculinities, reinforce environmental degradation and social inequalities. Lastly, as with all the other things as well, renewable energy also holds the risk to reinforce that, or to replicate existing inequalities if market efficiency is prioritized over local needs, ecological preservation, and an equitable resource distribution. All of this together leads to the exclusion of women from the workforce, which damages not only the goal of gender equality, but also economic prospects. All right, next slide, please. So what are the implications for the energy sector in detail of that representation's findings? So women and marginalized groups are underrepresented in decision-making. That includes government, but also private sector and unions, for example, which leads to the exclusion of women's perspectives, because since they remain significantly underrepresented and in the economic and political decision-making processes, their ability to influence policies that impact them is significantly limited. And for example, male-dominated unions and policy-making bodies fail to adequately represent women's labor rights and interests, further marginalizing them in workplace policies and leadership roles, meaning that if we want to change those systemic barriers to inclusion, we do need to employ more women in those areas. The fossil fuel sector and renewables alike like gender equitable leadership. So women remain to be pictured as energy consumers, being largely excluded from those leadership and technical roles at the moment. In the fossil fuel industry especially, hierarchical power structures concentrate decision-making among male executives and policymakers, which perpetuates gender inequality. And gender-blind hiring practices, lack of mentorship, and family-unfriendly workplace policies prevent women further from advancing into leadership roles. Which is desperately needed to realize a more equal and just transition. So why is all this previous information important to realize the energy transition? Next slide, please. I get a little bit more into like academic concepts here. So we're going to turn to the concept of stickiness of systems. That is something that relates to path dependency and allows us to understand why some systems persist, despite they are not the best possible system that is out there. So the relevance for the study is basically, why do fossil fuel-based energy systems persist, even in the face of clear evidence of their harm? Meaning, we do know that fossil fuel systems are not here to stay. Why is it so hard to change that, apart from technological questions that are with that? And then why do decarbonizations and just transitions face those systemic barriers, like including economic dependencies, entrenched power dynamics, cultural norms, and the like? So basically, how can we unstick systemic resistance and promote the just transition? So what we've seen in the study, which is basically closely related to the concept of petromasculinities, is that there's a mutual reinforcement of fossil fuels and patriarchal entrenched power structures, which is due to concentration of power in male-dominated leadership roles, which includes marginalized groups from decision-making. That is also something that relates to governance and policies, meaning that the fossil fuel subsidies and also related to, for example, security concerns, prioritize industry stability over environmental and social justice. An economic model which is focused on growth comes together with the fossil fuel dependency that is linked to traditional forms of masculinity, which entails also climate denial, for example, and a resistance to gender equality. So really that traditional male view of like man, what it means to be a man. Technocratic solutions and exclusion oftentimes exclude other environmental needs, and especially harming, for example, indigenous communities if energy projects take place on their land. And then there's a political resistance to change, which can be partly explained with past dependency. So relating to the stickiness of a system that is already in place and wants to survive, so to say. So we have a fossil fuel industry which lobbies to remain in power. So with all of that, there comes the risk of perpetuating those entrenched power structures within renewable energy systems. So to really realize a just transition, there needs to be a tap into the potential for positive change, which is there. So we can use just transition policies to promote equality, sustainability, community-based solutions. We can use women's leadership to support long-term sustainability and inclusive energy systems, and community-driven models can foster the local empowerment and fair resource distribution. But as of now, there's still the risk of an unequal access to grid, for example, electricity affordability and ownership, which mirror the fossil fuel system, continuing to exclude marginalized groups, and exploitative labor conditions. So exploitative labor conditions, for example, in supply chains, and the existing power hierarchies that it comes with do persist when energy transition prioritizes business interests over interests of justice and equity. And that is something that where we have an especially high risk for if we have an underrepresentation of women and marginalized groups in the renewable energy workforce, particularly in leadership, but also in technical and the well-paid positions. So after all of that, I think we are need to some answers to that. So let's turn to the policy options, which will help to overcome these systemic barriers to a just transition. Next slide, please. So generally, what is important to overcome all the struggles that I just laid out is really a holistic approach. Resources, rights, and representation are deeply interconnected. You cannot work on one of those things without taking note of the others. So to realize a just transition, really looking at the whole picture is really important. There needs to be a recognition of intersectionality, so acknowledging intersecting inequalities like race, age, disability, gender, and then tailor the solutions for diverse socioeconomic and environmental contexts, explicitly including civil society actors in all stage of energy planning. Then for policy integration, energy policies need to be integrated with climate and environmental justice principles, and developing regulatory frameworks that incentivize investment in renewables while penalizing harmful practices while doing so. Policy coherence in line with a holistic approach is also very important, something where intersecting inequalities are acknowledged and the policy solutions are fit for diverse socioeconomic and environmental contexts, which is also something that is outlined in the Paris Agreement as being incremental to a just transition. And then lastly, to ensure meaningful consultation and participation of women, girls, and marginalized groups in decision-making processes. So really explicitly including them in all processes which lead to the realization of renewable energy projects. I have prepared another slide where I go into more detail for that. So I try to keep that with having the time in mind. I'll try to keep that short. So fostering access to resources and their equal distribution is one of the three key pillars that we found to be important within the study. So having resource access and control for marginalized groups, particularly women and indigenous communities, meaning that they have equal access to and control over energy resources by addressing systemic barriers such as unpaid care work and restrictive gender roles that can reached, for example, through community control and ownership of resources. So promoting decentralized community-led energy models that empower the local populations and prevent large-scale renewable energy projects from reinforcing the exclusionary and profit-driven systems. It can also be reached through economic empowerment and fair labor standards. So to establish gender equitable policies, enforcing labor protections, and integrate informal work into economic frameworks to improve working conditions and ensure fair wages in the renewable energy sector. And lastly, through the recognition of care work, which is something that is always very important when talking about gender equality. So to acknowledge and to integrate care work into just transition strategies, which ensures gender responsive policies, social protections, and investment in low carbon care-centered employment sectors. The second pillar is advancing rights in the energy transition. So really recognize access to clean, affordable energy as a fundamental human right, ensuring inclusive participation in energy governance for women and other marginalized groups, and protection from environmental harm for those groups. that can be achieved through, for example, strengthening nature-based and environmental justice, so to establish and enforce legal frameworks that recognize ecosystems and natural resources as rights-bearing entities, preventing environmental exploitation and ensuring accountability for violations. And lastly, to address historical injustices by implementing reparations, land restitutions, and proactive safeguards to prevent further harm, ensuring that the energy transition can be equitable and acknowledge past exploitation. And the third pillar is inclusive representation, ensuring meaningful participation of marginalized groups in energy governance, for example, by institutionalizing mechanisms for representation, capacity building, and decision-making influences. That also includes enhancing visibility, representation, and accountability. So establish accountability mechanisms, inclusive platforms, transparent data collection to track progress in gender and social inclusions in energy policies. And the last part of that third pillar is redefining narratives on gender, masculinities, and nature. So challenge the dominant gender norms and extractivist narratives in energy governance, promoting care-based, reciprocal relationships with nature and inclusive social frameworks, which of course need some accountability mechanisms. So transparent monitoring, independent oversight, which is needed to ensure inclusive decision-making and that marginalized voices are meaningfully integrated into energy governance. So next slide, please. What is the conclusion of that? What is needed for global transformations? What can we take from the study? So one important point is, of course, that energy systems shape societies. Energy is at the core of so many parts of our daily life, that reforming energy systems can have broader effects also on how we cooperate globally, how we implement the Sustainable Development Goals, gender equality and labor rights more generally, and environmental justice and economic empowerment, just basically how we live in cooperation with our planet and with each other. It is also very important to shape uncertain energy futures, meaning that we do need to strengthen the global commitment to a just energy transition. And one way to do that is to advocate for feminist foreign policies, continued role in international policies in different areas, but also including energy policy. And the feminist key approaches, so focusing on human rights, for example, promoting security, promoting inclusion, should remain a key framework despite political shifts, and does not necessarily need the label of a feminist policy. Feminist foreign policy could be used in the context of energy to address decarbonization, so it can holds the potential, so to say, to strengthen coherence between foreign policies, energy policies, and development policies, to really foster that holistic approach. Energy justice, due to the very important role of energy in our societies, must be a core element of all feminist policy strategies. And climate justice approaches should be integrated within feminist policy approaches. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. On the questions that you can see now on the screen, but I do think, Presidini, you would like to chip in?
Yeah, thank you. Paulina, for your insightful session. This is a guided question session, so you can see the questions in the screen. So we value your insights, so please don't hesitate to raise your hand and speak out your perspectives. To start the guided session, I will invite Nikita Singh. She is the Deputy General Manager in Greenstead. So, Nikita, can you share your thoughts? We love to hear
Yes.
from you.
First of all, thank you, Paulina. Such a interesting and very knowledgeable session it's conducted. And thank you, Prasadni. It's a privilege to be a part of this session. Um, I give my background. I'm Nikita Singh. I hold 14 years of experience in renewable energy industry, basically from the projects. I can relate a lot of things what Paulina has described in her slides. And I feel, yeah, there is a need of not only the technological but also a social dimension has to be come into the picture a lot. Uh, the stakeholder consultation is very, very important. Take an example of COP29, where the participation of women is only 8 out of 78 people for a decision making. So in renewable industry, not only in renewable but infrastructure industry, tech and automobile industries, there is a requirement. And if I talk about India, uh, I can say there are only the worker population ratio of the women uh, aged 15 and above has risen from 22 to 40%. But again, the Indian female workforce rate is only 32%, placing it among the bottom 15 globally. So here I am seeing the ratio is less, but yeah, the trend is a positive. But what are the barriers to reach to that thing? That is one thing I feel. And there is a requirement of foreign feminist policy for sure. So in my experience, if I say working on solar projects where I have seen highly technical and site-based things, I noticed that the presence of women on site was very minimal, especially in the role of construction, civil, and engineering. At that time, gender role was quite rigid also, I think 10 years back. But many assume that it was all a man's job. But what inspiring now is clear shift today I am seeing in most of the companies, they have a woman empowerment. There is a cell, there is a some policy they are trying to adopt related to the gender equality. So I have seen the change also, but at a very slow pace from the engineering to project management, even in a heavy civil work also. The landscape is changing, but still there is a need of a powerful policy in place or steps there. So if I talk about India, while India hasn't formally adopted a feminist foreign policy as of now, there is a strong potential, there's requirement. So India's renewable energy diplomacy through the International Solar Alliance, there's a platform which I have also attended previously, that can go further by embedded gender responsive financing and women-led training programs across the partner countries. That is one way we can see. And the feminist approach would mean not just exploring technology, as I said, but ensuring it support women's livelihood and leadership across the borders, the rural areas where the skill development is required. Again, the government is doing something on the skill development side, but there is a need. And I'm very happy to be a part of this session so that I will go through it and I'll definitely connect to the women leaders to understand their views and try to push from my side as well. Thank you so much again. Yeah.
Thank you, Nikita, for your insights. And Praveen is raising his hand. Praveen, you can share your insights, and we will love to hear from you. Parveen.
Yeah.
Parveen.
Hello. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
Farhat Parveen. Okay. My name is Farhat Parveen, and I'm from National Organization for Working Communities, and I also convene a feminist consortium, which is called Fem Consortia. And the Fem Consortia is, a consortium of more than 13 women-led and women rights organizations and alliances and networks, all around Pakistan. And we, are very, fortunate, I would say, to work on a project that was supported by Oxfam Canada, and it was called Women Voice and Leadership. It's a very, based in feminist principles. So, as an old guard, I would say that all my life I have been in this a struggle and movement, feminist movement. I think it is very, very important to now talk about feminism more precisely, because most of the time it has been confused, with the gender. But I agree that we need to have a gender focus in our, faculties, in our, universities, and project related work and program related work as well. But the kind of issues that women face in South Asia, I think it is very important to have a feminist focus on the issues. And I'm very pleased to hear what Paulina has been explaining. And I think it is very, hello. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can
Okay.
hear you.
So I felt that her work resonates a lot with the kind of work which we have been doing in Pakistan for so many years. But feminist foreign policy is a new branch in this regard, and I'm very pleased and thankful to Paulina that you have brought this in light. As I told you, that I work with women and workers basically. So I can tell you that what you have researched, and your findings are very, very relevant to Pakistan as well. And I would like to know more about your work, and I just want to read the whole report, and then I would want to come back to you, Paulina, and all the other participants. I hope this group continues. So this is my initial contribution, and I'm really happy to be part of this session. Thank you a lot. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your insights. We would love to hear from you, so please raise your hand and we will give a chance to speak and you can share your insights.
Hi, Prasadini. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, this is Pritika from Greenstack. I'm working as an engineer here. And thank you so much for the opportunity. And thank you, Paulina, for the amazing presentation. It was very insightful and thought-provoking. First off, to go on the topic, feminist policies in India, I think they are increasingly gaining recognition due to the rise in different people coming up with their issues and the rise in social media. But it is specifically, I feel, a bit more aligned towards sectors like education, healthcare, and labor rights. And when it comes, it is still limited in the energy and infrastructure policies. And even if it is there, it is more often aligned towards administrative roles for women's rather than being on the front line like leadership roles. And gender is often treated as a welfare concern rather than an integral factor in you may say systemic decision making. But there are few national policies like the Ujjwala Yojana, which is for clean cooking gas for women in India. But it is inclined towards helping women in the rural and urban areas who don't have access to cooking gas also. So there is a slow shift towards these inclusive energy access, yet proper implementation of these lack certain depth. So it is really good that events such as these bring us together and help us raise such kind of issues, even though if it is more towards a very blue coral kind of participants, but I think it is high time that such issues are brought into a bigger stage. And what I would like to say is that global sustainability concepts, they must definitely be contextualized to resonate with domestic and regional settings so that they can be more actionable in future. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Kritika, for giving your thoughts and ideas. And also in Sri Lanka perspective, I will give us more idea about Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, I feel that feminist policy approaches are often misunderstood or not taken seriously. From the young age, starting at school level to university level, very few girls are encouraged to study engineering or get into the energy sector.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And as we grow older, the number of women in these professional spaces becomes even smaller. So currently, many women are brought up and thinking that tough jobs like decision making or leadership roles are not for women, but I don't think that's true. Just think about how well women manage things at home, running home households, taking care of children, or organizing family events. These are real skills. They are shown that women can lead, plan, and manage effectively. So I believe this strength should be recognized more in our workplaces and reflected in our policies. And actually, I think we should go a step further and introduce clear policy when recruiting people for the organizations or agencies, something like quota for more to make sure more women are included. Sometimes we need that extra push to break long-standing barriers and create equal opportunities. Thank you. That's my perspective. And anyone want to share your insights? Please raise your hands. We love to hear from your side. I see our chairman, Stel Pedersen, is joining today. So, Stel, feel free to unmute, and we love to hear from you also. Are you?
Thank you very much. I think it has been quite interesting to listening to both the presentation, but also the views from the participant who has been speaking so far. It is a learning experience for me. I think this is an arena and a subject that is extremely important. I think that the fossil fuel description that was made, how male have controlled this part for centuries, and how this is strengthening the structure for blocking the transition to renewable is actually true. And we see now in Europe how many of the renewable initiatives has been rolled back recently. Even with clear policies from the government and government influence, we see that the development is now put on hold in many important infrastructure projects. So this is a discussion that is having an impact far beyond also the energy sector. I think it has some influence on how we want our society to develop and how we need this equality taking place. I see now in some countries that women who is taking the leadership, and I mean the CEO role, is very successful, and successful both when it's coming to making the changes to sustainable operations and companies, and also extremely profitable. So I think to make a light in a dark tunnel, I would say that we see some examples that will encourage this change, and I think the opportunities will, at least in Europe, be brighter by the years, as these companies are, as I said, encouraging the investors and owners actually to see that this is a good for not only society but also for their own profits, which is normally come first with many of these companies. The social responsibility for the energy companies, I think, is we all are quite well aware of it, but unfortunately that is not always a responsibility these companies take as a guidance for how they are developing their operations. In Asia and in some of the developing countries, I'm more concerned about the situation and the development. There is some lighthouse. I think that Sri Lanka is actually fairly good compared to some of the other countries. But there is countries that they really need to make changes, and I hope that collaboration and panel and forums like we have today can help making the changes, because these habits that we have is really hard to change, and it is only by the education and discussion and the transparency we can make it happen. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for giving us your insights. And now it seems like we will love to hear from you. If you want to speak, please raise your hand or just speak out. Or if you have any questions, you can ask. Since we have came into the end, so would you like to take a picture to make this session memorable? So can you please turn on your videos and can take a picture, and we would like to see your smiling face. Okay, thank you very much, Paulina, and thank you everyone for participating for today's session. Without the audience, this webinar will not be a success. So I want to thank our audience, and also thank you, Paulina, for giving us this opportunity, and thank you for accepting our invitation, and also everyone who gave us their perspectives and their insights. It's really helpful, and we really appreciate your efforts. So thank you everyone for joining this webinar.